1. I woke up to a text from one of my best pal's moms this morning. Something along the lines of, "Stop hanging out with my son because you guys are staying out too late." College students during summer were both 23, and he's waking up at 3 p.m. every day and not getting enough done. Some context, he took a month off work to move houses, and I went and helped. Just after I returned back to my home city after my recent semester at school abroad, me and a couple of other mutual friends of his helped move all the furniture and their personal belongings into a U-Haul truck and help them move. Long story short, we worked 8-hour-plus days helping them move. Because his mom wanted literally everything moved, including the closet doors and curtains and washer, dryer, and fridge. And they had a million bags and random furniture. After those long days of work, we would hang out at night, go for a smoke, and talk and just vibe. And after we finished moving, we'd occasionally meet up late night after our duties were finished and go for a walk and smoke. Thing is, some days we would return at 2 or 3 a.m., but it was summer vacation, and we didn't plan on letting this continue for any longer than another week at most, as his hiatus from work would end, and I would go about my endeavors. I looked at these 2 weeks as my post-semester break period, where I just did whatever I wanted, and instead of drinking or going to parties, we just hung out, had good, genuine conversations, and listened to music. But it was late into the night, as I mentioned earlier. So today I woke up to his mom texting me and accusing me of influencing him to stay out late and go to parties, which we didn't, and being a degenerate, essentially, and that if I didn't stop bothering him, she'd find my mom and try to earn our friendship. Now, for some more context, she is a single mom, and she's also mentally very volatile, from my experience, and his stories of her that he tells me. She's not afraid to be selfish and greedy towards everyone except her and her family, basically using any manipulation tactic to get her way. And if she doesn't, she freaks the hell out. Basically, this is the part that gets spicy, is when I responded telling her that we weren't going to parties, instead going for walks and hanging out alone as good friends, just having conversations and catching up. I also told her, and maybe I was too brutally honest, that her accusing me of doing bad things to her son is very disrespectful and not my problem. I also told her that she should respect her son enough to act like an adult and have his priorities straight, which my friend does for the most part. He was taking a break, for fuck's sakes. His mom just wants an unrealistic perfectionist lifestyle and demands him to do crazy shit. I ended the message by telling her to be more respectful and not send such messages to me with false accusations and threats. This made her flip out. She basically went on a rant about how I'm a terrible human with ill manners, and how children should obey their parents, no matter what, etc., and that she would call and report me to the police if I texted him or called again, telling me to feel shame for talking to her like that. I consulted my girlfriend after the fact, and she said I could have been a bit nicer in the way I delivered the message, like not being so brutally honest and blunt, but I told her what type of person his mom is, and my girlfriend understood. I'm a very kind and empathetic person to all my friends and family, but I cannot stand disrespectful people that fail to consider anything or anyone outside of their little delusional reality. I did not attack, but simply stated the truth. The question I have for you guys is, did I do something wrong? What does this speak about her character? I want an analysis of this situation and how I should go about it like a mature adult. That's all. Thank you. 2. I'm an 18-year-old male, so for backstory, I was on a train with me and my family. Not like Subway or anything, but a one-day train ride in India. The trains in India are stereotyped for being dirty and stuff like that. We rode second class, it had air conditioning, and are cleaned every single day, so people aren't usually chill, but if you don't bother them, they don't bother you. Here enters our entitled mother and father. They enter the train, and it is immediately recognizable that this is the first time they've rode on the expensive side of the train. I'm not trying to be snobbish, but you get what you pay for, and we would have gone for a cheaper ticket if there were seats on the train. It was about 4 a.m., and they were walking through the corridor with loud noises, 3 children, 2 of them crying, and they woke up a nice lady because they needed 2 more seats for the kids. The nice lady woke up and questioned them. She was speaking a South Indian language, but she understood the entitled mother and father's language. They didn't understand hers. They said that, "Stop speaking such primitive language and give us your seats because we have kids, and we deserve it," obviously in their language. So the nice lady immediately started speaking English. Remember that she understood them, but they couldn't understand her. "I'm sorry, but these are my seats. And why didn't you buy 2 extra tickets?" For this, one of the younger boys, who looked about 11, stepped up to translate for his parents after they spoke. The entitled mother then started, "Speak to us only in Hindi because your mouth doesn't deserve English." Yeah, she said that. The nice lady, who was about 45-ish, had already become friends with my mother and aunt because it was a long journey, and they needed someone else to chat to. And also the nice lady was nothing but nice towards our family, and was traveling with her family of around 7 people. Herself, her husband, her mother-in-law, and 4 of her kids. She also offered me to play a game of Uno with her kids, and some of them are still my friends. The nice lady then stated the same sentence in Hindi. The entitled mother said that, "I have kids, you don't, so give up your seat and sit on the floor." The nice lady told them to F off and give their seats to the children and sit on the floor. The entitled mother wouldn't have this, so when the nice lady went to get something from her bag, she jumped on the seat and hauled her kids onto it. The nice lady, with a very calm face, said, "Woman, this is not your seat, please get off." The entitled mother said finders keepers. Well, not exactly, but along those lines. And because of this, we offered the nice lady a seat, and my cousin, who was a baby at the time, on my aunt's lap. But she politely declined and went to sit with her family. We thought nothing of it until the entitled kid entered the story. I was about 14 or 15 at the time and was playing Mario Kart on my iPad, when one of the entitled kids tries to pry the thing from my hands. But I was older than him, so he wasn't able to get it. I said, "Dude, what are you trying to do?" He replies he wants that game. I immediately say no to him, trying to snatch it and not ask for it. So after a couple of minutes later, the EM asks me, "Can my son have that game?" "No," I replied. "But why? My angel is bored and he deserves it," with a smug kind of look. I said, "Your angel tried to snatch it from me without asking." "What are you talking about? He would never do that," she said in a shocked tone. "Okay, whatever helps you sleep at night, and keeping your son entertained is not my responsibility," I said. It didn't bother me after that, but I know what you're here for. About an hour after the iPad incident, the entitled kid went to explore the train, and the nice lady politely sat in one of her seats. The entitled mother asked, "Why are you sitting in my son's seat?" The nice lady responded, "I'm not sitting in your son's seat, he was sitting in mine." "No, he was sitting there, and you have to get up before he comes." The nice lady responded, "I am not moving from here." "You could do whatever you want." The entitled mother, with a smug look, called on the father. "What seems to be the problem here?" the father asked. "This lady is sitting in our son's seats. Make her stand up." And this is the part where all hell breaks loose. The entitled father raises his hand, looking like he was about to slap her. Here in India, slapping another person, especially a woman, is not only highly frowned upon, but also illegal. So basically, every adult man who saw this stood up and started to yell at the entitled father for doing this. He suddenly became as tame as a kitten for the rest of the trip, but the entitled mother didn't. She called the police, and they came aboard at the next station and questioned her on what happened. As usual, she made false accusations on how they stole her seat, and they thrashed my husband. When nothing like that happened, and when the true story came out, they were asked to leave the coach and move to the lower coaches. The story ends in a happy ending with them losing money. 3. This must have been when I was like 12 years old, so some details are spotty, and most of it has been filled in secondhand by my mom years later. There was a kid who lived in the same condo complex where I lived while I was a kid. I always thought the kid was an insufferable douche, but my stepbrother was friends with the guy. The English translation of his name was, and I'm not kidding here, Justice. Justice constantly did dumb things, to the point where he got expelled from school and had to go to a different school further away. I don't recall what he did to get expelled, But in our country, you have to do something seriously bad for that to happen. However, it went down before my mom and I moved in with my stepdad. So my stepbrother used to go to school with him. Justice's mom was the classic "my son is an angel" type of mom who never punished him for anything. One night, Justice and some other kids went through every stairwell in our condo complex and unscrewed and took all the light bulbs. They got into the stairwells where they didn't live by calling random people on the door phone and claiming to be some innocent kid who forgot their keys. And, well, meaning strangers buzzed them through the door. They then brought all the light bulbs into the forest and smashed them. Justice then bragged to my stepbrother about this. Now, my stepbrother was no angel by any means, but even he thought this level of destruction was a bit much. So he told our parents, who in turn told the board of the HOA, or whatever the condo equivalent of an HOA is, who filed a police report for destruction of property. Justice's family was already on thin ice for a lot of shitty things that he and his mother had done. Stuff like not picking up after their dog. He once let the dog do its business in the stairwell as well, being loud and disturbing their neighbors. And some of their neighbors complained about a smell coming from their condo. More on that later. Justice also had several other cases where he had destroyed property, or was suspected to have destroyed property. A lot of people in the neighborhood also thought Justice's mom was a hoarder, but she never let anyone else in the condo, so nobody could tell for sure. But the part that was visible from the door was definitely cluttered. So, needless to say, they were already bordering on being evicted when this happened. And this was the straw that broke the camel's back. So the board contacted a lawyer to do the groundwork for an eviction process, and they were annoyed about what a lengthy and frustrating process this was going to be. Evicting someone in our country is seriously hard. However, Justice's mom decided to make this easier for them. The board arranged an event where we were all going to work together and clean the area around the condo complex. Unfortunately, our family had a definitely real and not at all impromptu reason to go visit my grandparents for a few days. And this was totally planned months ago and couldn't be changed. So sadly, we couldn't attend, but after what happened, I kind of wished we had. You see, Justice's mom, enraged by the fact that the board had filed a police report on her son, she didn't even know about the eviction yet, charged and attacked the chairwoman during the event, in broad daylight, and full view of pretty much everyone in the complex aside from us. Justice's mom attacked the chairwoman while screaming like a madwoman that the chairwoman was a child hater, a monster, and that she deserved to die. She tried to strangle the chairwoman, but was quickly restrained by the others. Police were called, and Justice's mom was arrested for assault. Thankfully, this helped speed up the eviction process considerably. She ended up with a restraining order as well, so I guess you could say Justice's mom was served. What? You know damn well somebody in the comments was going to make that pun if I hadn't. The last few days Justice and his mom had left in the condo, he often talked loudly about how moving away was their choice, how everyone else in this town sucked, and how much better the city they were moving to was. He insisted that the place was so warm and nice and they had palm trees. I had been in that city, and I easily informed him of the fact this wasn't true. In fact, nowhere in our northern European country had palm trees. It was such a ridiculous claim to make, I don't know if his mom told him that or if he made the lie up himself. He kept insisting that it was true, however. As a bonus, when the eviction date passed, Justice and his mom still had not moved. The HOA waited for the mom to leave the condo and got a locksmith to open up the door and change the locks. They discovered two things. A, the rumors of Justice's mom being a hoarder were true. Her condo was cluttered with all kinds of junk that the HOA boxed up and moved to a storage unit, on Justice's mom's dime, of course. But more importantly, B, the condo was in terrible condition. For one, it stank. It reeked of cat piss to the point where they must have let their cats, and probably their dog too, go on the floor for years without doing anything about it or even trying to clean it. There was also mold and a ton of damage done to the apartment. Some of the damage was probably made on purpose to punish the HOA, but some of it was probably just run-of-the-mill neglect. It took months of work to make the condo presentable again. They had to replace basically everything in there, including the floors and some of the inner walls. It was so bad, I'm pretty sure they had to do some of the work in the downstairs neighbor's ceiling as well to fix the damages. Looking back as an adult, I honestly feel a bit bad for Justice. He was indeed a douche, but no wonder considering how his mom was. Nobody really suspected how bad it was for him. Usually you have this idea that if the parent is a hoarder, the kid will show signs of neglect. But Justice never looked neglected, his clothes were clean, and he always looked fed. But it's pretty clear he acted out the way he did to get attention from his mom. Before I go, I just remembered another thing that his mom did. My stepdad used to live in her stairwell before he met my mom, and he was repeatedly annoyed by her for letting cats into the stairwell and just assuming someone else would let them outside, and not cleaning up when her cats pissed in the stairwell. One day when my stepdad was leaving, he saw one of her cats in there, and he used his foot to push it out the door so it wouldn't be locked inside. Apparently, Justice's mom saw that, and I don't remember if the cat in question actually ran away, or if she just banked on nobody knowing how many cats she had. But after that, she told everyone in the neighborhood that my stepdad had kicked one of her cats to death. Thankfully, everyone knew she was full of it at that point, so nobody believed her. 4. Not my story, but I was a witness. This happened about 5 years ago, and I completely forgotten about it until I went back to the scene a week or so ago. I live in a city in the UK that's in no shortage of entitled people. I have my own stories, including one or two I've shared before, but this was on another level. Close to the high street and the malls is a shop that specifically sells acoustic musical instruments, mostly guitars, drums, and a lot of folk instruments like lutes and mandolins. They also sell really niche, hard-to-find instruments, including second-hand ones, and depending on what they have in stock, these instruments can be really niche. About 5 years ago, during the summer, I had some time to kill in town before I met a friend down the road, so I went into this shop just to browse. I have zero musical ability, but I'd always wanted to check this place out. In the back of the shop, I saw an instrument that I now know to be a Chinese guzheng, a flat-laying string instrument with about 20-plus strings. This one in particular was over 5 feet long, and even though it had some metal parts and some pearly-looking decorative insets, the bulk of the body was a polished dark wood. It was beautiful to look at, and even though the shop has a policy where people can play any of the instruments as long as they're careful, I couldn't bring myself to touch it, especially when I saw it was priced at over £500, even marked second-hand. Of course, there were other fascinating instruments and other things in the shop, but the guzheng is the star of this particular story. After about 10 minutes browsing the shop, listening to people picking up instruments and jamming with the super chill owner, I get ready to leave, but before I do, in comes the entitled mother and her little hellspawn, the entitled kid, who looks to be about 6 years old. The entitled kid immediately starts running around the shop, poking at various display instruments, while the entitled mother just hangs out by the door on her phone. Obviously, the kid was the one that wanted to be here, and the mother couldn't give two shits. The owner immediately stiffens and watches the kid as he runs around this really densely packed shop, trying to grab anything he can reach, giggling and shrieking with unchecked energy. The mother still stays within a few meters of the door on her phone. Now, remember when I said the guzheng is a flat-laying instrument? It's usually played on a table or a mount, and this one was rested on 2 sets of legs that held it pretty low to the floor, at 6-year-old height. The kid sees it and barges over, starting to pick at the strings wildly. It's awful to listen to. And even though he's been patient so far, this is where the owner steps in. "Miss, your son is..." "He's just playing, just leave him alone. He'll get bored in a minute." "But that instrument is really expensive. We have some children's guitars over there he might like to..."
"Mommy, I want the big guitar."
"No, EK, you don't even know how to play it. Now come on or we'll be late."
"But Mommy, I want it."
This is where it all goes south. Entitled kid grabs the guzheng and tries to take it off the leg. But this thing is taller than some full-grown adults, and it is a chunky beast. I guess the kid had enough freaky 6-year-old strength to lift off one of the 2 legs before he let go of it completely. It crashes onto the floor, and the sound it makes is awful. It's completely split down the middle of its length, and at least one of the strings is split. It was probably quite old, so it might have been more fragile than it should have been, but even so it's trashed, completely ruined. The kid just starts freaking out. He's screaming, crying, and he runs straight back to his mother. "Oh, God, are you okay?" "Yeah, is he okay?" says the owner.
Of course he's not okay. That piece of rubbish could have crushed his feet.
His feet were fine. He literally just sprinted across the shop to his mother, clearly in no pain at all.
I want to go home, Mummy. Take me home.
Come on, EK. If he's hurt himself in any way, I'll sue you for everything you've got.
Hang on. That Guzhen is completely wrecked.
So what? It's just a weird guitar. If it was worth that much, you should have had it insured.
It's not a guitar, it's a Chinese Guzhen, and it was second-hand. It's still worth over £500.
£500 for a chunk of wood? You're joking. It sounded awful. If you think I'm paying for some used, overpriced Chinese rubbish, you've got another thing coming.
It's at this point I notice one of the owner's employees has come down from upstairs to see what's going on. Fun fact, the city I live in houses students from 5 different universities, including 2 within a mile of each other. And these universities take in a lot of international students that are allowed to take part-time work in the city. The employee is clearly student age just by looking at him. He also happened to be East Asian, and just going by statistics of the city here, most likely Chinese. The entitled mother also seems to notice he is standing there. She immediately pulls her phone out and points it at the employee with her other hand. She's going red in the face, moving herself closer to the door and pushing the entitled kid outside while she confronts the owner and employee.
Was that thing yours, huh? You bring it with you from China? Fuck you, and fuck you if you think I owe you anything. My son's feet are probably broken, and if I hear anything about this or see either of you again, I'll sue you for negligence and have you shipped right back to where you came from,
she said to the owner and employee respectively.
I've got both of you on camera. I know who you are.
With that, she charges out the door, grabs the kid by the wrist and bolts down the street. The owner and employee look absolutely shattered. The other people in the shop, including me, offer to help clean up, ask if they're okay. After a few minutes, I had to leave them to it, as I was already late to meet my friend. In the end, I never followed up on the situation, but 5 years later, the owner is still running the shop, so clearly nothing happened to them. I took my now partner in there a couple of weeks ago, and they had not one but 2 absolutely beautiful Guzhens for sale. 5. So this happened 2 years back when I worked as an engineer at a heritage museum. And at the end of the tour of the heritage museum, we had these rideable trains that kids and their parents could ride on to blow off steam, pun intended, from the boringness of the tour. So I was given the job of driving these trains. Driving these trains was the best job in the museum, and I was fulfilling my lifelong dream of going on a steam train, blowing the whistle, listening to the kids all cheering and giggling with glee, and genuinely having a good time with my passion. So as the engineer, you get to decide what train you want to drive for the day. I was going to drive the best steam train in the shed. It was the streamlined silver New York Hudson J3A Dreyfus. It was a sight to see, and the whistle was loud and monstrous. Anywho, I decided to take it for a test drive before I took the passengers out for our 1-mile track with tunnels, hills, bends, trestle bridges, and crossing gates. I did the daily routine of oiling the axles, steaming the train, and cleaning the overall look to ensure it was as shiny and silver as possible. I drove the train in the direction of our train yard. Okay, so let me set the scene. I was going to go through a railroad crossing, and before that there was a parking lot on the side of the track, while there was a whistle post on the other side. So this post was there to tell an engineer to blow the whistle before coming to a railroad crossing. I blew the whistle and immediately heard a car honk. I did not have time to turn around. The honk probably woke someone up, or a friendly person saw me coming and did a friendly honk. I went to pick up the cars and drove to the station. There was a crowd of kids and their parents looking at our manager's booth, and there was yelling. I did my usual thing of breaking and using my bell instead of my whistle to tell my manager I had arrived on time. The manager and an angry woman came out, our entitled mother.
Him!
I got up from my train idling. Me, ma'am?
How dare you try to scare my kids and me while we're taking a nap?
This was probably the person who honked at me. I'm sorry, ma'am, but I was following the sign's directions.
Well, look how traumatized my kids are.
Her kids were fawning over the silver Dreyfus, taking pictures, not looking traumatized or scared. Ma'am, he was following directions, said my manager, and please stop yelling. You're scaring the other kids. So if you're going to ride, I'm going to need to see your ticket. Some kids in line to ride my train's passenger cars looked uncomfortable and antsy. They probably wanted the train ride to start. The parents were looking at the entitled mother because they didn't want to deal with their antsy kids. Fine. But my kid should ride in the front with the engineer. EM gave the ticket to my manager, and my manager looked at the ticket. Ma'am, first of all, you need to book the ticket online and choose the seats for your kids and you. The front end near the engineer and the back near the caboose are our most popular options. This ticket is for the middle train cars. Secondly, this ticket is for tomorrow. So I cannot let you ride today. OP, start the train. The EM started to have another tirade with the manager, and I went over to the two kids of the EM to tell them I was starting the train. I felt bad for them, having a psychotic mother like that, so I gave them a golden train keychain that I give everyone at the end of a train ride. We were a few minutes behind schedule, thanks so much, EM, so I yelled, all aboard, blew the whistle, and left the station a little too quickly. I drove the train, and I was coming up on a railroad crossing, and I saw the EM pulling up to the dropping gates of the crossing. I had a devilish thought in my head. I dropped the speed to 10 to 15 miles per hour. Karen was honking her car and screaming at me. I just looked at her and smiled, putting my hands up. I'm just following the rules. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to The Impractical Proudness of Parrots, Ipop, episode 110. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. I would greatly appreciate it if you could hit the like button and or leave a comment and share the video around with friends and family. You know, that kind of usual things. Basically, YouTube isn't just going to promote the videos for the hell of it, so we have to let them know that you liked it and you'd like more people to see it. Okay, let's see. I don't think there's any other business today, so let's move right along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is, name one foodstuff that you love, but if it had the texture of another foodstuff, it would be awful. Like chicken-flavored sponge cake. Personally, I don't want anything to do with that, even if it's got frosting gravy. I look forward to seeing what other gross and weird concoctions you come up with in a comment below. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. Might be tea time. We'll see. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.